to America. Lynch took his camera back to the border recently, where just last month he was out documenting just how easy it is to cross. As easy as that. And joining me now, Dennis Michael Lynch. Dennis, do you believe that we will see a new surge of immigrants coming across the border as a result of this struggle that is now playing out in Washington?
Of course, Martha. First of all, the surge hasn't stopped. They still come in. I mean, they're coming in as you and I speak right now. The surge, though, now that he has said the word amnesty or, referred to amnesty, it's going to start to take off. And the Border Patrol agents who I speak to, they are petrified because they're already overwhelmed. And now with the new surge coming in, they can't defend the border. And if they can't defend the border, we know we have things like Ebola coming through, right? That's about to come. We know that we have terror coming through. So if they are preoccupied with changing diapers, which is what they do, we are extremely exposed as a nation.
So the president has played down that. He has said, that was sort of a one-time issue that we saw last summer. It had a number of factors that played into it, but he doesn't believe what you're saying, that it's an ongoing situation. And we all remember Jan Brewer trying to get the president to come down to the border to see for himself. I don't think that it looks like there's any hope of that, is there?
Martha, I've been saying this for a year. I believe that this is part of his legacy, and he knows it. I think he purposely wants the surge to come. And by the way, there's a thing I've also been warning about, which is called the perfect storm. It's when the Obamacare business mandate collides with an amnesty. And look what's happening. The amnesty will come in December, and the business mandate will kick in January. When that hits, the unbelievable blow to the American worker is going to be earth-shattering. He knows all of this. He knows that the border is wide open. He tries to make it sound as if it's one sliver in Texas. Meanwhile, you just showed Arizona. I know that border as well as anybody does. People are coming through at will. It's not about fences, Martha. It's very important. Nobody ever says the right thing about this. The way to stop this problem starts and ends with removing the incentive for people to come here illegally. So until you remove the job market, the magnet for these people, and until you stop saying the word amnesty, they're going to continue to flow in.
And you believe amnesty is what he wants to be part of his legacy. Obviously, the president's had a very tough week. This election was not good for the administration, no matter what signal they, may be gleaning from it or what excuses they may be giving for what happened on Tuesday. The results are very clear, right?
I think people don't understand this man. He is very smart. He's very intelligent. I think he understands that Obamacare could be repealed in some way. You can't repeal 30 to 40 million people. We don't have 11 million people in this country. If he gives them an amnesty, the only way to undo that is if the next president is brave enough to override that amnesty, and I don't hear anybody saying that. So if that doesn't happen, if we don't get the right president in place, you're going to turn around and have 30, 40 million people having paperwork to where now they can compete against American workers. That changes a country. You can't reverse that. You can't reverse people.
Dennis, thank you very much.
Thank you, Martha.
Good to have you with us tonight. All right, so joining me now is Michael Wilds, former federal prosecutor and former mayor of Englewood, New Jersey, with his thoughts on all of this. Michael, good evening. Good to have you here tonight.
Good evening, Martha. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Your take is slightly different on all of this. Tell us.
Well, this is the greatest experiment in democracy, and people will always want to come here time memoriam. President Reagan had the audacity to call it an amnesty, and nearly 30 years ago, we haven't had any immigration reform. We've had Band-Aids put literally on problems rather than treating this properly. We have such a political system. A Haitian can be interdicted on international waters, but a Cuban can get a green card if they hit dry land. And we have a homeland that is vulnerable. I don't think there is an immigration lawyer or an individual with a pulse in this country that wants to have a porous border. We are a system, a nation of laws, and we have yet 11+ million people unidentified in our nation. And Martha, we do not have enough handcuffs, airplanes, beds to detain, and the inclination to remove these individuals. And many of them are giving monies into our treasury. They're buying orange juice, and they are the greatest risk takers and entrepreneurs that we have historically known. So people can get frightened, like the guest you had on, and frighten viewers about this thing. But from my perspective, look, I'm a second-generation immigration lawyer. My dad got John Lennon a green card, and the scholarship and the jurisprudence of the whole deferred action, the prosecutorial discretion that the president will rest his hat on, evolved out of the Lennon case. We want John Lennons in this country. We bring the most fascinating stylists, photographers, and talent here, and they then employ Americans. Otherwise, we get marginalized.
What people want is for people to come here legally, to go through the process, to come here legally, to not pour in over the border, threaten some of the properties on the other side of the border. I mean, I think it's very easy to say that from where you're sitting, but you're not living in the border area where these people are being threatened, where their own livelihood and their own land is put in jeopardy time and time again, and where they feel like nobody's listening to them.
I felt this as a mayor because the resources are thin, and yes, it looks like Americans are going to be marginalized while foreigners come here, but you have to look at it differently. These are individuals that are doing work and will enfranchise greater employment. They will pick the berries in Georgia and the hospitality corridors.
I understand what you're saying, but what do you suggest? You want an expanded worker program? That's what the president is calling
Martha,
for, it would appear.
I want a comprehensive reform to this problem.
Including border security.
So we're not chasing this. You know, the whole argument, should we fix the borders first and then fix the problem here? We cannot afford to have 10 million plus people without an identity of who they are. We need, you know, we are the laughingstock of the world. Canada, Australia, they have point systems.
Yeah, but there are many places in the world that don't let anybody into their borders. Yeah. I mean, that think that we are the laughingstock of the world for specifically that reason, because we don't seem to have a border at all.
We need to have a border. I agree with everybody that our border is way too porous. Again, I used to deport people when I was with the U.S. Attorney's Office. We want the bad guys out, and we want to have an orderly system to have the good guys in. But we cannot scare people. And there isn't a person watching this who isn't an immigrant himself unless you're an American Indian. And if you appreciate that national heritage, you're going to look at an immigration as a great tool.
But it's a question of illegal versus illegal immigration. You're talking, of course, everybody came from somewhere else. Everybody did, except for the Native Americans, as you point out. But you're talking about legal versus illegal immigration.
Right now, I agree with you. We need to set up a legal system. What are we going to do with the people that are here? And what kind of legal system are we going to put in? Are we going to do something like President Reagan did? The last time there was reform, he did give amnesty, and he then started punishing employers to do immigration. We have a new normal right now. We have to make sure we pay this forward so that we're not chasing this argument 30 years from now. We need to set up an orderly system. And yes, that means our leaders, Democrats and Republicans, who are now given new trusts, have to make sure that they govern properly and fix new laws in the system. And yes, recognize that we may have to give status to people that are here.
Michael Wildes, thank you. We got to leave it there. Good